Our first speaker this evening is Philip Altair. Philip is a second-year undergraduate student reading history and politics at Peterhouse College. They won the right to speak through open audition. Philip, the floor is yours.
I was just saying that Max invited me to speak today at like 1:30 p.m, so please forgive me if this speech is sort of hastily written in the past 3 hours instead of me writing a supervision essay on Constantine. This is much better. I will probably hand in this speech. Anyways, it's making a very simple argument, but I do ask you to follow me through it. Now, before we start, a very quick note on what I'm going to say, which is simply, I will deliberately not try and define very rigidly what it means to be a sinner or a saint, nor will try and attempt to give an image of what it might mean in terms of behavior. So I'm not trying to denote by saying that someone is a sinner that this means certain kind of behavior or certain kind of behavior when you're being a saint. And obviously we can question the idea of whether employing that vocabulary is still reasonable in our time, but I think my fellow speakers in proposition will do that later on. Now, to the argument. This motion starts very ominously with 2 words, which is this house. And I thought that is where we'll start as well, because I would like to build a house. And I would like to build that house together with you. Now, as your faithful architect and builder, my first suggestion is to take a look at some form of blueprint that could give us an indication of what house to build. And with that, I'd say we start with the person who thought most deeply about what sin means in the life of human beings, and that is St. Augustine. Now, I'm not qualified to talk about St. Augustine the way that probably Alex O'Connor is when he's going to do it later on, but I will try and do so nonetheless. Now, for Augustine, sin is an intrinsic feature of human life. The world is imbued with sin because it is a product of sin. And any interaction with the world, be it in politics, be it in society, or in a community of whatever kind, is an interaction with sin. So every word I utter when I explain to you what the roof of our house will look like is carried to you and to your ears on molecules that are inherently impure. Every brick I hand you to lay the foundation is dragged down by the weight of its corporeal existence, in fact by the weight of our corporeal existence, that is, by the weight of sin. Can I get through the first page of my speech? Raise it later on if you still like to say something. I'll come back to it maybe. Now, the weight makes building that house a very tedious affair, right? It strains our bodies until they hurt, but we continue constructing because we have to complete the house for the simple reason that we have to live somewhere. Now, even so, we cannot deny the fact that it is an impure endeavor. What's more, not only is it impure, but we already know that the house we are building won't satisfy us. After all, the only reason why we're building it is because of necessity. The house that we really want is unattainable. It is in fact perfect and therefore unattainable. Now we can say that because we do have an idea of what our perfect house looks like. And the people speaking in opposition have a very good idea of what that house looks like. We know it as well because we traced its outline and its foundations whenever we sat down to rest after carrying the bricks and mortar to the building site of our imperfect house. And the house we are building is imperfect because our existence is imperfect, Augustine would say. It is an instance of sin because it has fallen out of a divine order. So being a saint means reflecting a perfect order. But for now, we are far from being saints, we're just sinners, or we might say we are imperfect beings. Now, at last, the house is finished, it's done. But just now, as we were setting down the final brick, we cut ourselves on the palm of our hands, unfortunate, but it happens. But at least we have a house to move into. Now, this could provide us with some relief from the heaviness that we have felt as we were engaging with work out in the world. But life does not get better inside the house. Go ahead.
Just in terms of us being imperfect and sins, do we think there are ways to rectify those sins? And kind of how religion has taught us is to, even though we make mistakes, we're able to confess and to rectify those so that we are closer to a saintly state.
Absolutely. I will try and address that in my conclusion. B, even if you were to rectify your sins, it's still a matter of fact that the world that you live in is inherently wrongly ordered, right? So even if you were to rectify your sins, well done, but you're still not a saint until you enter the afterlife. Yes, go ahead.
I just want to raise this a minute ago, though. Your description of St. Augustine sounds much more like second century Gnosticism than his understanding of this world. And it's not arguing that reality, matter itself, is inherently sinful. He's in his theology of original sins, he's arguing that the world did inherit, in fact, the Bible said that. He does not think that matter in and of itself is the evil, as some people argue.
Okay, you have a very much more sophisticated understanding of St. Augustine than I do, and I very much accept that. As a matter of fact, though, the argument I'm trying to make is to say that when we conceive ourselves in the way that we are now, we have to conceive ourselves with the idea of sin being inherent to it. Would you agree to that?
Yeah, I agree that there seems kind of inherent in sin, I suppose, that is not the sin argument, but again, you're arguing past Augustine, this idea of perfection, which again is those Pelagianism, which
Yeah.
as well as St. Augustine is opposed to.
Absolutely. Okay, I don't think we can engage in a debate. It does go to Platonism, which speaks to the idea of a perfect order that we're falling out of, doesn't it? Okay, we can't do it. I'm very sorry. Sorry about that. Let's meet up in the bar afterwards and talk about it. Absolutely. Now, I was saying that life in our house does not get better once we enter it. Because imperfectly as we are, we continue to act imperfectly. So we make mistakes when we go out in public. Yes, we might remedy that, but it nonetheless happens. It's part of ourselves. And we will be entangled in the schemings of whatever friends and acquaintances we might invite into our house to let them admire whatever we've built currently. And even when we decide to withdraw into the tranquility of our own home, we will be reminded of our imperfection. By hearing or reading of the suffering of humans, their evil doings, or simply the tragedies of this world. So at some point then, when not even our home can protect us from the overbearing burden of this world, we will have to recognize that we are a race of imperfectly ordered, fallible, and unnatural human beings. Everything about us seems wrong. Our only hope is hoping for exactly what the opposition is arguing, that is sainthood. Perfect order and perfect tranquility. We can only hope to awake from this nightmare sooner rather than later and emerge in what Augustine would say is our true nature, that is to say, being a saint and a citizen of the heavenly city of God. But for now, unfortunately, we are still in that house that we've just built, and we're staring at the walls until they suddenly start to change a bit and move around and transform. And the walls shift until we find ourselves in a medieval lecture theatre, surrounded by an enormous crowd of students, eagerly listening to what some guy has to say on the teachings of an old man whose name has long been forgotten, a guy called Aristotle. Now, our presence in that lecture theatre already feels much different than our presence on the building site. It feels light, not heavy, and it feels natural, because we are, by nature, meant to enter the lecture hall, to listen, to study, and then to apply what we've learnt. We are after that meant to go out into public and do as our nature commands. Live an active, live a good life. And once we're done for the day, we might just return to the home that we've just built for ourselves, which is still standing, by the way. Now, remember that we cut ourselves when we constructed our house early on. When you take a brief look at the palm of your hands, you will find that the wound is still there. As it seems, this then, Aristotle that is only a different version of our original nightmare. And his scholastic interpreters are just another one of 1,000 faces trying to explain away the miseries of our life. But they try to explain away the miseries of our life and of the world that we live in. Yes, we do remain imperfect beings, but it is in our nature to be. Aristotle's arguments restore value to human life, to the world that surrounds us, to the insights it reveals, and to the monuments humans erect during their brief existence on Earth. Our lives, oh good God, certainly not. Our lives remain imperfectly ordered, but in that imperfection, they are rightly ordered. Our lives are valuable. Our existence is not a falling out of order, but a valid and sound order in itself. Here, being wrong means being right, and this is a contradiction, but being a human being means being a contradiction. Now I ask you, what is closer to your reality? What is closer to who or what you are, or who or what you would like to be in the future? Is it otherworldly perfection, or living a good life here on earth? Now, our house is not divided any longer, but it is not the Garden of Eden either. Rather, it is a fully human creation which we can see, touch, use, and inhabit for the sake of living our lives well. In it, we discover that the revelations of Aristotle enable us to shake off the corrupting weight of Augustinian sin and of a world imbued by it. The result is not unfulfilled yearning for sainthood, but a recognition of the fact that our human existence here on earth has inherent value, despite it not being perfect and not being ordered. We will make mistakes. We will hear of crimes and tragedies. We will be drawn into immoral schemings, or find ourselves facing a choice of two evils and not of good or bad. But what a saint might refer to as a sin, as an expression of the sinful imperfection inherent to us, we as humans would simply call living a life. These things will happen, I am aware. They must happen if we seek to live a meaningful life, whatever that means to you. I'm not saying that I know what that means. I generally do not. That is what Augustine and the Neo-Aristotelians might actually agree on. They agree that in practice and in theory, it is hard to be a saint when you maintain a social life, when you engage in politics, or when you become part of the community that surrounds you. It is hard to be a saint even when we meet to debate here tonight. And even more so when we go to the bar afterwards to have a drink, to chat, laugh, and worry about precisely that world which any saint in its blinding perfection would want us to disregard. So at some point tonight, we will all collectively leave this building, and David here would have liked me to sit down long ago. David here will later on also lock up this chamber. The staff at the Orator will close the bar. Our guests will be on their way to a hotel or back home. And we will all return to that very house, that very home that we've just constructed together. Because that is where we are meant to return to, not out of necessity, but due to our nature. I'm sorry, these are my last two lines, but thank you. Sorry, Sal. Apologies. Importantly in all of this, and by not answering this point of information, I'm part of this. Importantly in all of this, none of us will have achieved anything close to perfection, and that is to say anything close to sainthood. And the reason for that is very simple. It is very hard to be a saint when you're also meant to be human.